Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. This is my update and wrap-up video for October 2021. I'm filming on November 1st. So I thought I would start with kind of a general check-in and then go into the usuals, divination tools that I've acquired this month, just kind of highlights from divination practice, books I've read, and then TBR cards and Animal of the Month at the end. So I had some plans to do quite a few things on my YouTube channel for October. Plans for some fun VRs, plans for some new content. There's not a VR to anything, just new videos from me. And very little of it actually came into fruition this month. It has been a busy, stressful October. Work has been really busy. I've been just facing a mountain of grading work in particular has taken a lot of time. And then also preparing for upcoming material as well. So it's just been extremely busy. I had a reading week where we have a week off class, and I feel like I, had intentions to get ahead with that time off and really just managed to not get behind, but not really get ahead either. So I feel like I haven't had time for much that wasn't work this month. On top of that, I have unfortunately been dealing with some cat health issues on the part of both my cats at the same time. So that has been extraordinarily stressful. It's been lots of monitoring and stressing and, wondering what to do. And we've been to the vet 3 times cumulatively now, just in the last 3 weeks. So that has been really weighing on me. But the good news is that Bandit seems to be fine. She had a gland issue, which folks who have cats, you probably know what that involves. So that was dealt with, and I'm fairly confident that the issue is resolved now. Daryl has just received a diagnosis of pancreatitis. So it's been stressful the last couple of weeks watching him have appetite issues and be kind of better or worse depending on the day. It's hard to tell how serious it was or what was actually wrong, but luckily pancreatitis in cats is treatable, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be finding out probably tomorrow, but hopefully it's even something that can be managed without any long-term medications or anything like that. Maybe a brief antibiotic and a change in diet. So I'm hopeful that both of the cats are going to be fine, but it has just been this big weight, that has been affecting sleep and everything else. And I think the cats have been really agitated as well because my neighbor, who's great, was doing a bunch of work on the front of his house. So there's been jackhammering and, ground shaking construction work happening right outside. Bandit in particular is very noise skittish. So I think that there's just been stress in the house all around. Definite stress in the house all around between me and my partner. Some stressful things going on. And with the cat's health, this is just a thing that's, a worry on top of all the other, usual things like work busyness and so on. So it's been not the best month, to be completely honest, but I've had some good things happen in October too. It's not all terrible or anything. It's been a stressful month where it has been hard to really put the time into my non-work related pursuits, which includes YouTube, in the ways that I would like to. Obviously, my jobs have to take some precedence in terms of getting things done. Filming lecture videos for my students that have very particular deadlines attached to them needs to happen before I can be YouTube filming. So things have taken a bit of a backseat in ways that I didn't plan, didn't really want, but such is having to prioritize, I guess. I will mention I have a second job. Folks probably know that. I have a second job, which is actually elected on a yearly term, and I was re-elected this month. So I have that second job, which I love the second job, for another year. I'm very, very happy about that. So that was a great stress reliever because it is a small part of my income, and also just good to be, working with these good folks that I work with for another year. Happy about that. So that's kind of where life is. Things still feel weirdly hectic. I just had Daryl at the vet a couple of hours ago, like 5 hours ago. I got the first appointment of the day to get him looked at and had the blood test, and just got the phone call recently about the pancreas. So now there's a follow-up blood test, and then we'll figure things out. But it feels like being able to take a breath, knowing, at least it's, you never want to find anything really wrong, but at least you found something, which means you can treat it, and it happens to be something that is reasonably common and should be treatable. So that I'm very relieved about. I also got a new eyeglass prescription, which I'm very happy about. I was overdue, and definitely feeling headachiness associated with being overdue for a new prescription, which of course my new one is stronger than the other one. So I have some new glasses, which I'm quite happy with. And I can see slightly better than before, and the screen will bother me less. So that was a great thing in October as well. So divination this month. I did have some exciting divination things to share, I guess. One is that I completed for October the 4 weeks of prompts on Instagram, Embrace the Magical, put on by Kelly Fitzgerald at The Truth and Story. And this may actually be the first time that I've made it through a month's, it's weird to call it a challenge because it's not really competitive, but like a month worth of prompts without just dropping off and not completing it. So I was pretty pleased with myself for that. And it was also a really good experience. The prompts were really good. And it was one of these things where the readings kept coming up as being very clearly about one very specific area of my life, and it happens to be a specific area of my life that I'm contemplating some significant changes in. So it turned into these, these daily draws, but really big, impactful kind of messages in these daily draws. So that was a good experience. I like doing these kind of things. But I don't really like Instagram. So that's the challenge. So I did the whole challenge, but I think I only posted, 6 out of 28 readings or something like that. I don't stick to that part because I don't like being on there every day. I've contemplated departing Instagram, at least taking a month off. I will share that on Instagram if I do, but so that was a good thing though. Embrace the Magical was a really nice thing, and I liked the prompts and had some really great readings out of it. I also, with Kelly from The Truth and Story, I took one of her random classes, the short classes. So she has some longer, multiple week classes, and then these short ones that is just a single session on Zoom. And she did a Zoom class on aromancy and scrying. So aromancy, reading atmospheric conditions like weather changes and air pressure and wind sound and wind direction and cloud observation, and all of these things as thinking about the atmospheric conditions in terms of energies that are present around us, and then also incorporated scrying into the class with some various mechanisms for doing that. And I loved it. Scrying is something I've always had a hard time with. But I enjoyed seeing all the different techniques there. And the aromancy piece was really interesting for me. And it connects nicely with my Druidry practice, which is also really focused on getting to know the natural environment that you live in and getting to know the ecology around the region in which you live. So having this now practice of daily observation of what the wind is doing, what the humidity is doing, what the pressure is doing, and seeing those changes and seeing how those changes affect me is a really great kind of self-awareness practice and mindfulness practice, cultivating being more observant of the environment. So I really, really enjoyed that class. In terms of new divination tools that I bought or received this month, I did end up paying for this month a playing card deck on Kickstarter, but I won't receive it until 2022, like mid 2022. So I'll talk about that deck when it arrives, but I backed this deck called River and Stone, which is a fully illustrated playing card deck with nature scenes on the minors, and then kind of face cards for the Jack, Queens, and Kings. And I really liked the artwork in this deck. I would like to work with playing cards more, and it's very different from anything that I've seen, and I like a nature-based deck very much, and there's diversity in terms of the face cards or the court cards, and so I'm looking forward to that one, but I don't have it here. But that's the only thing that I purchased in the month of October. However, I did receive in the month of October one deck, which I did share in a video already, the Afro Tarot 2 by Jessie Jumanji, and I love this deck, as is clear from my my walkthrough, not quite first impressions video of this deck. It's just beautiful. I had pre-ordered it quite a ways ahead and was so happy when it finally came. So I'm on the lookout for a frame for a print that came with this deck, and I've been enjoying the guidebook. The guidebook is actually on Jessie Jumanji's website, so go check it out if you're interested. This beautiful deck. So it's the only one that I got, and I'm really enjoying this deck. It's very sparkly on the sides. So I'm a little bit sparkly, but in my shuffling, the gilding has stayed really nice. I just always have a little bit of sparkles on me when I work with it. So Afro Tarot 2 is the one deck that I received this month. The other kind of tool I received that isn't quite a divination tool, but is one that will be incorporated into my divination practice in a few ways in the new year, is that I got my new day planner. I am someone who starts setting up their day planner months before the new year arrives, and I'm only a paper planner person. Maybe I can make a video sharing my planner setup once I'm all organized, but I got this year, for the first time, I got a Hobonichi planner. I got the Hobonichi Techo planner. So these are really great planner. It has daily pages in it. So 1 page per day, lots of space to be writing in. And so I've started setting it up with the astrological content that I would like to have in the planner, including the moon signs, the sign that the moon is in, where the new and full moons are. The planner actually has the moon phases in it, but because this is of course, a Japanese planner, it is not keyed to my time zone. So in some instances where it says it's a full moon or a new moon, it's a day off of my time zone. So I've been putting in some stickers of full and new moons just on the times that are relevant to my time zone, and thinking about how to use all of these different sections of the planner. So at the start of each month, you get a blank lined page that I've decided is going to be where I put my animal of the month there, and so on. So I've just been looking at this. I'm really excited for this. I've looked at these Hobonichi planners many times. They have very good paper in them, Tomoe River paper, which is very, very thin paper, but is very resistant to ink bleeding through the paper. So it's nice because you get a lot of pages and it's not huge to carry around, which I like. And I got a pen to match, a Lamy pen to match demonstrator so you can see the ink inside. So I've been playing around with my planner and getting all set up for 2022, which makes me happy. I love a new planner, and I think that this one's going to be really great. Next up, I will talk about books that I've read this month, or books that I've finished this month. Most of them are on the Kindle, so I don't have a ton of physical copies to show you, but I do have a few. I finished 9 books in October, and so I'll just tell you very briefly about the 9 books that I read in October. I read Mammals of Ontario by Tamara Eder, and this is it's kind of like a field guide. It has different sections for different mammals, of course, that are found in Ontario. And for each mammal, it tells you a description, habitat, food, where they live, like if they build a den or a nest or whatever, like that, their reproductive cycle and how many young they have. And then there's also a description of similar species and ways to tell them apart. And then there are some illustrations of each animal and information about their size and also their geographical distribution, where you might see them in these little maps. We'll show where you can see them. And not the best for a field guide, in the sense that some of the ideas of how to tell the different animals apart are not the clearest to me. But I did really enjoy this. Is basically every animal has, some interesting facts that I didn't know about it. So I liked learning about these different mammals, including the red squirrel, who has taken over my backyard shed. The red squirrel piles up food for the winter, and so my backyard shed currently has multiple big mounds of walnuts on top of it. There's hundreds of walnuts inside the shed. There's hundreds of walnuts behind the shed. And so I learned a little bit about red squirrel here, which was interesting. And this is part of, I'll mention before I put this away, part of the reason for reading these is because for AODA first year Druidry candidate curriculum, part of what you do is read 9 books on your local ecology. And so this is one of those books. You make your own curriculum. Obviously, everyone's living all over the world. People are reading different books about the place that they live, but this is one of the ones that I picked. So I'm about halfway through my reading now. The other book I read that is also related to Druidry work, I read Ogham, Weaving Word Wisdom by Erin Rowan Laurie. And so I've been learning Ogham Divination, as I've mentioned in previous videos. And this was one of the books that I had seen recommended on the Ogham. I do plan to go back to the kind of historical manuscript sources, but before doing that, I wanted to get a couple of what perhaps will be a bit more approachable books on Ogham, and this one was one of the ones that was suggested. So I really liked this book. There's quite a bit of it in the book about the author's own practice, and she's a Celtic Reconstructionist, polytheist. And so I learned quite a bit about Celtic Reconstructionism as well as learning about Ogham. I am not a Celtic Reconstructionist, but I was interested to read about that practice and that path anyway. And there's a lot of information about each Ogham in here in terms of the word Oghams, keywords, colors, tree associations, bird associations, different ways to work with Ogham as a divination tool. There's also pronunciation guides in the back, which is very helpful. So I did very much enjoy and appreciate this book if you're looking for a book about Ogham, Weaving Word Wisdom by Erin Rowan Laurie. Then I read some horror, and you'll recall, possibly if you watched me last month, that I decided not to pick any TBR cards for October because I wanted to make a point of reading horror in October. And so I did. I read 3 horror novellas. The first one I read was Stephen Graham Jones, Mapping the Interior. And Stephen Graham Jones is an Indigenous author who has written numerous horror, mostly, novellas and novels. He's a well-known author, and I had never read any of his work. My brother quite likes Stephen Graham Jones's work, so I chose an older novella by him called Mapping the Interior, which the description of that book describes a young boy who is seeing his deceased father in their house. And it really doesn't give you any more than that to go on in terms of the description of the book, but that it is a horror story. This book affected me in all sorts of ways, I will say. It's a very hard one to talk about without giving away a lot of information about the plot. I've written a review on my Goodreads, including content warnings. I'll link my Goodreads below. I put content warnings on all of the books, but perhaps horror books in particular call for that kind of information. The book certainly contained some violence and was quite disturbing, but was mostly very much a psychological kind of a horror story. I couldn't start another horror right after it. I had to give myself a break. Very creepy. I would like to read more Stephen Graham Jones based on having read this one. I enjoyed it. I mean, enjoyed is a weird thing when the book's subject matter is what it is, but it was very, very good. And so definitely Stephen Graham Jones. Recommend Mapping the Interior. I read Zinni Rockland's Flowers for the Sea, and this is a new novella. This just came out this year, not very long ago at all. And I had this on my list of books coming out in 2021, because I make a list like that of books coming out that I wanted to read when it came out. So Flowers for the Sea, also a horror, very disturbing, very atmospheric, also hard to say too much without giving away the plot, but Flowers for the Sea follows a woman, Eroxy, who is on a ship and has been at sea for, I think, 1,700 days, roughly. And this ship is just, the conditions are very poor. They're running out of food. There are threats in the sea and in the sky, all around them. And Eroxy is pregnant and maybe, or is so far anyway, the only person on the ship who's been able to carry a pregnancy to term after the disaster that led this group to all be on this ship in the first place. And so this one is some body horror, some really disturbing descriptions of the ship and the setting. Very, you could smell the ship from the descriptions, and it did not smell good. Very good. And I had read that this book had been compared to the work of Octavia Butler, and Octavia Butler is one of my all-time absolute favorite fiction authors, in any genre at all. And I think that the comparison was appropriate, which is a big compliment from me. I thought Eroxy was a really well-developed character in a very short amount of pages. And the setting was very fully fleshed out in a very short amount of pages. And it was also a very affecting read. And I'm not sure if this was Rockland's debut. I know that they've published, I think they've published in anthologies and things like this, but as a standalone, it might have been their debut, or maybe just their second book. But I definitely want to read more of Zinni Rockland, because their book, Flowers for the Sea, was incredible. The other horror novella I read 3 novellas, was Margaret Killjoy, The Lamb Will Slaughter the Lion, and this is a anarchist, kind of post-apocalyptic sort of book that is set in a anarchist intentional community that follows a group of people there who have summoned a creature of sorts, spirit, to get rid of someone who had taken power in the community, who had become authoritarian in a way, and are dealing with the aftermath of this summoned spirit still being there. This one, I think, for folks who are anarchists who are inclined in that direction, will be an interesting read. I enjoyed it. There's a sequel. I've already bought it. There's a lot of themes in the book around consensus decision making and trying to stop consensus decision making from falling into majoritarian rule, and there's different kind of power dynamics in a community that is striving for something like social justice. And so I appreciated it in that way, as well as it being a scary story with a spirit that's hunting people in it. So that was Margaret Killjoy's The Lamb Will Slaughter the Lion. There is, again, a sequel. I don't remember what the sequel is called. It's also a novella, very short, but I've already purchased it. Looking forward to it. I read a anthology this month. Not horror, but there was some horror in it. And that anthology was the year's best African speculative fiction. And it was edited by Ogenichoy Donald Ekpeki. And he is a speculative fiction author from Nigeria. And so the collection included all different African authors writing speculative fiction. And so there was horror stories in there. There were some science fiction in there. There were a few more fantasy-leaning stories in there. And, it's hard to talk about an anthology of short stories without getting really specific into individual stories. And sometimes I find these anthologies can be quite uneven, with some stories standing out to me more than others or whatever. But I will say this one, Year's Best African Speculative Fiction, was really, really good. Really consistently good overall. I didn't really think that there was like a bad contribution in the whole bunch. Definitely lots of 5-star short stories in there for me, ones that I will happily revisit and reread and pass on. And I'm also happy because I had not read most of the authors in this collection. I had read some, but not most. And now I have a list of authors whose work I enjoyed to follow up on and try to find more work from them. And that's mostly why I really like collections like this, because you find, the stories that you like the best, and then you can read more from that person. So I'm really looking forward to pursuing some of those authors' work as well. I read, finally, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which is a novel that has been sitting on my e-reader since the last trip I took. So that tells you how long it's been on there, because it's been a while. I had put it on there because I was traveling, and I put a bunch of books on the Kindle before I went away, and I just never got to it. And so it just starts moving down the list, and I never got to it. It's been out for years, and well reviewed, and definitely in my area. I enjoy circuses. So I finally got to reading it, and I really, really liked it. The description of The Night Circus is about dueling magicians, which made me think it would be something like a Prestige kind of thing, but it totally was not. The dueling magicians is a tiny part of the book that in some ways is central, but calling it a duel is very misleading. They don't really know who the other one is for a lot of the book, so it's not actually focused on that. I think that the main character in The Night Circus is the circus. It is described in immense detail, and it just feels so magical, and so I really liked that. I did not really care for there is a bit of a romance element in the book, and I just didn't really like that part, but I liked the circus part a lot, which was the main part. So I will happily read Erin Morgenstern again. She has another book that I want to say is called The Starless Sea that is more recent, that is also sitting on my e-reader. So I will get there eventually. I read with some friends Alex E. Harrow's A Spindle Splintered. And we had read Alex Harrow's novels, 2 of them, And I had given those both 5 stars, and we'd all really enjoyed Alex Harrow's novels. The Once and Future Witches was my favorite one. It was excellent, excellent. And A Spindle Splintered is a newer one, and it is a ostensibly feminist retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And I struggled with it, I'll be honest. And I'm disappointed because I gave Alex Harrow's novels both 5 stars, and this novella I did not. I didn't hate it. I shouldn't make it sound like it was terrible. I didn't hate it. There were things about it that I did like. I enjoyed the depiction of female friendship in the book, the main character and her best friend. Their relationship is really developed really nicely, even though the best friend is not in a lot of the plot. And there were definitely things about it that I really liked. However, I found the feminism in it to be a bit women can do anything they set their minds to kind of thing, which strikes me as totally inadequate and not very nuanced at all. But there is definitely an audience for this, and lots of people loved it, and lots of people did give it 5 stars. I would say it definitely reads like a YA, which is not something I normally read. But if it is something that you do normally read and enjoy, then A Spindle Splintered may be actually exactly a book that you would love. Not quite my thing, but it was. I'm glad we read it. I'm really glad we read it, and I will continue to read work from Alex Harrow because I loved her novels so much. And then finally, the last one I read with Katie Flowers in Blossom Book Club, and we read Tyson Yunkaporta's Sand Talk: How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. And this was a good one too. Another nonfiction, of course, as it suggests. It reads a bit like a collection of essays, I would say, on different interconnecting topics. The strongest parts of the book, I thought, were his descriptions around Indigenous epistemologies and ways of thinking, and the ways that Indigenous knowledges are at times misrepresented, are at times commodified in ways that don't, actually represent the thought in good ways. The ways that, Indigenous knowledges are of interest when they seem to be something that colonial power structures can take up to bolster themselves, but not otherwise. And so those descriptions were really interesting for me. And I haven't read a lot in terms of Indigenous authors from Australia that isn't fiction. So that was also interesting for me, in that I've read more Indigenous authors from Turtle Island than I have from Australia. So I enjoyed that book, and I'm really looking forward to, with Katie Flowers' book club, discussing the book as well. So those are my 9 books. I would like to pick for November a couple of TBR cards from Jessie at Bowties and Books. They make these TBR cards. I've shown them lots of times before. I have left out a couple of the cards that I've already had a couple of times, in the past year, so have a bit of variety. And I think I'm just going to pick 3 because I anticipate November being busy as well. And I also have quite a book stack going right now. So I want to see if I can, read some of those books. But choosing some new TBR cards for what I should read in November. Only 3. Okay. Card that I haven't had before. Freshmen, begin a new series. Well, that's always a little bit dangerous. Because beginning a new series is kind of like code for read 5 books, right? So that's going to be something for me interesting. Begin a new series. The next card that I have, Career Day. And that says there, if it will focus, come on camera, let's go. It says, dream job as a child, read a book with a main character in that profession. And it has a picture of a child there dreaming of being an astronaut. I have never dreamed of being an astronaut. I have dreamed of a few different jobs as a child. So I'm going to have a look around and see what I can find that will fit one of them. And the third card. Going back to some of the reading in October. Victor Laval, horror or paranormal fiction with strong social themes. I know there's lots of good fiction in that category because I read a lot of it. So, I have Career Day, a book with a character in a profession I wanted to be when I was a child. Freshman, begin a new series. And Victor Laval, horror, paranormal fiction with strong social themes. Next, I can go on to the animal of the month. And the animal of the month for October is shark from Jesse Jumanji's Flora and Fauna of Africa deck. And here it says shark. And the message is move in silence, approach challenges and opportunities with vigor, hone your senses, and be alert. And the keyword for the plant, Venus flytrap, is preparation. And so I've had this card on my space in a nice card holder for the whole month where I can see it. I can see it from my bed. I can see it from my tarot reading table. I can see it, whenever I'm in my room. And I've been learning a little bit about sharks over the course of the month. Now, obviously, with a card like this, shark refers to a kind of family of animals. There are many species of shark that vary tremendously in terms of their behaviors and how they eat and what they do and how they socialize and all the rest of it. But thinking about sharks in a general sort of way, I have learned that sharks have the strongest of any animal sense of electromagnetic fields. I was looking for information about sharks' senses, since it was talking about honing your senses, and they can sense electromagnetic fields. They can distinguish currents very, very well, and they probably have a strong sense of hearing as well, and can hunt from great distances because they can hear potential prey from very far away. And so they're very, very sensitive creatures to particularly their natural environment, to the energies, we could say, in terms of electromagnetics or the energy of currents around them and changes in that environment. And so the shark has certainly been reminding me to be observant to those kinds of environmental factors. And it's kind of gone along well. It's not an animal I would have thought of right off the bat for this, but it's an animal that's gone along well with learning aeromancy and paying attention to things like shifts in wind direction and so on, or something that I can actually connect to shark in that way because the shark is so sensitive. They're also much more social than I knew. It seems that a lot of sharks really live and spend a lot of their time in quite large groups. I always picture shark kind of one by itself, but apparently for a lot of species that is not actually the case. And in terms of this message of moving in silence and approaching with vigor, which is also a message I can see in the Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap, sitting very still until something wanders in to the trap and then moving very quickly. And, this deck and all the pairings in this deck are so thoughtful. Sharks, I've also learned, have a kind of course, standard kind of swimming speed, depending on what type of shark it is. But many of the kinds of sharks can have these bursts of speed and can, for a short time, go very, very, very quickly in the water, much faster than usual. Like if they're hunting or if they're dealing with something that they consider to be threatening to themselves, they can really speed up very, very quickly. And so thinking about this together with the senses of the shark and the message here to approach challenges and opportunities with vigor while being alert to your surroundings, I feel like what the shark has to say is about maintaining kind of a good energy usage, thinking about the bursts of speed amidst a more slow swim most of the time, managing energy levels in terms of one's own capacities, but also in terms of shifts in the environment and the energies around us and how they affect our energy levels. I know they do a lot for me. Both I'm learning from the aromancy practice, I'm learning that I'm rather affected by atmospheric conditions in various kinds of ways. I knew I was in some ways, but it's been really interesting to observe in detail in a more deliberate way. But what's going on around us, is going to affect how we're feeling. And so the shark is a good reminder for that, to pay attention to, and sometimes I'm not that good at this, but like to pay attention to things changes in my environment or changes in anything in my life, and what their effects are. So the shark. And I'll finish just by drawing a new animal card. I got out the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit. I haven't drawn from this deck for a while. I do work with this deck only partially. I take out the, we'll say, like fantasy creatures. I like not to have them mixed in with the existing animals so much. I also took out a handful of animals that I've already had for the Animal of the Month this year, just to not get the same one twice. There were only a few, like there was a shark card in this deck. I didn't want to get shark twice, but in a row. But what animal will be the Animal of the Month for November? I'll just take one right off the top. Ooh, horse. Okay. I'm going to be learning about horses for November. I've spent a little bit of time around horses, I guess. Not a ton, but I will be learning about horses in November. So at the end of November, I will be here chatting about the horse as the Animal of the Month. That's my recap for October 2021. Thanks for chatting with me, listening to me chat anyway. Yeah, it's been a weird month. So I'm hoping to be back more, making more videos in November, though November is shaping up to be a busy month too. But hopefully there'll be no more, cat stresses and things like this occupying my mental energy, that I can maybe make a few more new videos. I'm looking forward to that when I can, and enjoying other folks' content, of course, as well, whenever I have time and can get to it. Thank you so much. I'll see you all again soon.